Have you ever tried to build something on a shaky foundation? You patch it. You prop it up. You hope it holds. But eventually, the cracks show up. That's what's happening in leadership right now. We're building skyscrapers on sand. We're throwing technology, strategy, and innovation at problems while ignoring the fundamental instability beneath our feet. Today, we're going to explore something different. We're going to do a deep dive into the work of Brené Brown, specifically her latest book, Strong Ground, The Lessons of Daring Leadership, the Tenacity of Paradox, and the Wisdom of the Human Spirit. This is a synthesis of her core ideas, distilled into a framework you can actually use. The central concept is finding your strong ground. And it's not a metaphor. It's an athletic stance. Literally. Think about a football player in the trenches. Feet planted. Core engaged. Ready for impact. That's what modern leadership requires. Not armor. Not bluster. Not the illusion of certainty. Ground. Because here's the truth. The ground is the only thing that can provide unwavering stability in a maelstrom of uncertainty and a platform for the fast, explosive change that the world is demanding. This is not another leadership fad. This is an urgent call to reimagine the essentials of courageous leadership. In a time when uncertainty runs deep, and bluster, hubris, and even cruelty are increasingly framed as acceptable leadership, we need a different way. So let's begin. Let's find our strong ground. So if strong ground is the foundation, the next question is, what happens when we try to build on weak ground? Imagine you've injured your knee. Instead of resting it, instead of doing the rehab, you just start leaning harder on your other leg. You compensate. Your hip starts hurting. Then your back. Then your neck. Eventually, your entire body is in pain because you refuse to heal the original injury. That's what organizations do every single day. We take dysfunction and we build on it. We pile new technology on broken processes. We launch new strategies on weak cultures. We expect people to perform brilliantly on unstable ground. And then we wonder why everything feels so hard. This is what Brené Brown calls the pickleball epiphany. It's the moment you realize that the pain in your shoulder isn't a shoulder problem. It's a core problem. You don't need shoulder exercises. You need core stability. And here's the trap we keep falling into. In today's world, we're obsessed with technology as the answer. AI. Automation. Digital transformation. And yes, these tools are powerful. But if you build technology on dysfunction, you don't get better systems. You get faster dysfunction. Technology doesn't fix broken foundations. It amplifies them. Strong ground is the only thing that can provide unwavering stability. But here's the catch. Finding it requires something most leaders avoid at all costs. Vulnerability. That word alone makes most leaders squirm. It sounds like weakness. It sounds like opening yourself up to attack. But here's what I've learned. There is no courage without it. Period. Risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure are required for anything worth doing. But here's what most of us do. We armor up. We think fear is the problem. It's not. The problem is armor. We self-protect when we refuse to rumble with vulnerability. We build walls and call them strength. I've seen leaders spend so much energy maintaining heavy armor that they have nothing left for actual leadership. The armor becomes the job. The performance replaces the presence. But here's the truth. The armor doesn't actually protect you. It just makes you heavy and immobile. And it isolates you from the people who need to see you as human. So you have a choice. Expend energy maintaining heavy armor, or anchor your feet to the ground and lean into the friction. And look, I'm not going to bullshit you. Vulnerability is hard. It's scary. It feels dangerous. But it's not as hard, scary, or dangerous as getting to the end of our lives and having to ask ourselves, what if I had shown up? This is the source code of daring leadership. Vulnerability is not weakness. It's the bedrock. And once you plant your feet there, everything else becomes possible. Once you plant your feet on that bedrock, once you accept that vulnerability is the source code, you start to notice something. The ground isn't just something you stand on alone. It's something you build with others. And here's where the physics of leadership gets interesting. Because Newton didn't just describe how objects move. He described how people work together. Think about the first law. Inertia. A team that's stuck stays stuck unless someone steps in to break the pattern. That's the hardest part of leadership, isn't it? Not the execution. The activation. The moment you have to say, "We're not doing this anymore," and actually create the force to move things forward. Then there's the second law. Force. Massachusetts acceleration. In leadership, your mass is your credibility. Your trustworthiness. Your track record. The more of it you have, the more force you can generate. But force without direction is just chaos. So you have to ask yourself, are you applying your energy in the right direction? Or are you pushing hard but going nowhere? And then there's the third law. The one most leaders forget. For every action, there's a reaction. Every move you make creates a ripple. Push too hard, and people push back. Listen deeply, and people open up. Create stability for others, and you become more stable yourself. Here's the beautiful irony. When you support someone, you get supported. When you create lift for others, you get lifted. That's not just good teamwork. That's physics. So the invitation is simple. Stop trying to be the strong one alone. Start being the stable one together. Apply your force with intention. And expect a reaction, because every action, even the small ones, creates a ripple. Once you understand that leadership is a team sport, that you generate force together, you inevitably run into a problem. We've been taught that leadership is about choosing. Choose to be tough or be empathetic. Choose to be strategic or be human. Choose to hold the line or be flexible. That's the dualistic trap. And it's a trap because real leadership isn't either or. It's both and. Often, two seemingly opposite things can be true at the same time. Think about vulnerability and strength. We're told they're opposites. But they're not. Vulnerability is strength. Real strength. The kind that doesn't need armor. The problem is our neurobiological need for certainty. We want to resolve conflict. We want to avoid the discomfort of paradox. We want simple answers because simple answers feel safe. But here's the thing. The most important questions in leadership don't have simple answers. They have tensions. Tensions we have to learn to hold without resolving them too quickly. So the question is, can you hold the tension? Can you dream and reality check? Can you be confident and humble? Can you lead with conviction and stay open to being wrong? That's not weakness. That's strength. Grounded strength. It's the only way to navigate complexity without falling apart. So stop trying to choose. Start learning to hold. Once you start holding tensions instead of running from them, a new question emerges. What are we actually supposed to hold? That brings us to one of the most powerful frameworks in leadership. It's called the Stockdale paradox. Named after Admiral James Stockdale, a prisoner of war in Vietnam for over 7 years. When asked who didn't make it out, he said, the optimists. The ones who kept telling themselves, we'll be out by Christmas. Christmas came and went. And they died of broken hearts. The ones who survived. They held two things at once. The unshakable faith that they would prevail. And the brutal, sobering discipline to confront the reality of where they were. No denial. No delusion. Just honesty and hope, held together. That's the paradox. And every leader faces it. Inside every organization, there are dreamers. They see the vision, fuel the mission, keep hope alive when everything seems impossible. That's gritty faith. And there are reality checkers. They ask the hard questions. They point out the flaws in the plan. They keep the organization financially and functionally viable. That's gritty facts. Here's the mistake I see leaders make. They pick a side. They either become all dreamers, chasing vision with no regard for reality. Or they become all realists, so grounded in the facts that they forget why anyone signed up in the first place. But here's the truth. Both are essential. You need the faith to keep going when the facts look bleak. And you need the facts to keep your feet on solid ground so your faith doesn't become delusion. So here's the question. Are you dreaming enough? Are you reality checking enough? Or are you hiding in one at the expense of the other? Once you learn to hold gritty faith and gritty facts together, another tension emerges. One that's been quietly killing organizations for decades. The tension between what we call managers and what we call leaders. Between the people who keep the ship running and the people who chart the course. On one side, the managers. The doers. The planners. The ones who translate high-level vision into daily reality. On the other side, the leaders. The dreamers. The visionaries. The ones who paint a picture of a future worth fighting for. For years, we've been told you have to be one or the other. Manager or leader. Plumbing or poetry. But that's a lie. Because great leaders don't choose. They master both. On the manager side, you need to master a set of competencies: planning and resource allocation, organizing and structuring work, directing and supervising execution, controlling and problem solving. These are the plumbing skills. The ones that keep the organization functional. On the leader side, you need a different set: vision and inspiration, aligning and empowering people, mentoring and coaching, modeling behavior and building culture. These are the poetry skills. The ones that make people believe. But here's the truth. The best leaders exist in the overlap. Where both sets of competencies come together. Communication. Decision-making. Interpersonal skills. Adaptability. These four competencies aren't exclusive to managers or leaders. They belong to both. And if you're missing them, you're missing the core of what it means to lead. So here's the question. Are you investing in the plumbing? The planning, organizing, directing, and controlling that keeps things functional. Are you investing in the poetry? The vision, inspiration, and culture that makes people want to stay. And are you developing the overlap? The communication, decision-making, interpersonal skills, and adaptability that make you effective in both worlds. Because you can't have one without the other. And if you're ignoring either one, you're already building on dysfunction. Once you've mapped out the competencies, the plumbing and the poetry, the managing and the leading, you run into a deeper challenge. Because even when you know what you're supposed to do, even when you have the skills and the frameworks, you still have to deal with the thing that makes leadership genuinely hard. Uncertainty. Most of us are terrible at it. We want to know the answer. We want to be sure. We want the comfort of conviction over the discomfort of doubt. I've seen leaders pretend to know things they don't know. I've seen them make decisions too fast because sitting in I don't know felt like failure. I've seen them invent facts when they didn't have them, just to feel safe. There's a name for this. It's called negative capability. The ability to exist in uncertainties, mysteries, and doubts without irritable reaching after fact and reason. Let me say that again. The ability to sit in the not knowing. Without panicking. Without filling the void with counterfeit facts. Just staying present, staying curious, staying open. This is one of the rarest and most essential leadership skills. Because when you can tolerate uncertainty, you stop rushing to conclusions. You stop pretending. You stop creating false certainty just to calm your own anxiety. And you start doing something much more powerful. You start asking better questions. You start exploring. You start allowing the truth to emerge rather than forcing it. So here's the question. Can you sit in the discomfort of I don't know? Or do you need to be certain right now? Because the longer you can hold that space, the longer you can resist the irritable reaching, the greater your capacity for strategic clarity becomes. Once you learn to sit in uncertainty without panicking, you open the door to something rare and powerful. The ability to rethink. Most of us don't do this well. We find a belief that makes us feel safe, and we cling to it. We defend it. We build arguments around it. We surround ourselves with people who agree with us. And we call that conviction. But it's not conviction. It's comfort. The comfort of being right. The comfort of having the answer. The comfort of not having to question ourselves. We favor the comfort of conviction over the discomfort of doubt. That's the human condition. And it leads us into one of three profiles when we face uncertainty. The preacher. They defend sacred beliefs as if they were absolute truth. Driven by pride, they refuse to question themselves. They're blind to their own knowledge gaps. For them, it's not about being right. It's about being right all the time. The prosecutor. They attack the flaws in others to avoid looking at their own. Their mind is set in stone. They interrogate, cross-examine, and look for holes in your argument. They're not interested in rethinking. They're interested in winning. The politician. They lobby for approval rather than truth. They say what you want to hear. They adapt their message to please the audience. Truth gets relegated to the backstage. What matters is not what's real. What matters is what's acceptable. These three profiles share something in common. They don't rethink. They reinforce. So what's the antidote? The scientist. Actively open-minded. Searches for reasons why they might be wrong. Views strategy as a hypothesis to be tested, not a truth to be defended. A scientist doesn't defend a hypothesis. They test it. They look for disconfirming evidence. They update their views when new evidence arrives. They don't have to be right. They have to be honest. That's the rethinking cycle. You have a belief. You test it. You look for where it might be flawed. You update it. You test again. So here's the question. When you're in a disagreement, are you preaching, prosecuting, politicking, or testing? Because the world is changing too fast for preachers, prosecutors, and politicians. We need scientists. We need people willing to rethink. Once you learn to think like a scientist, to test your beliefs instead of defending them, you're ready for one of the hardest questions in leadership. What is your relationship with power? Most leaders never ask themselves this. They just assume they're using power well. Or they avoid thinking about it altogether. But the way you hold power determines everything about how you lead. There are two very different ways to approach power. Power over. This is the armor. It believes power is finite. A zero-sum game. If you have it, I don't. It uses fear and control to divide. It provides false certitude based on ideology. It demands a scapegoat to blame. Subjecting others to power over is a desperate scramble in self-worth quicksand. It looks strong. But it's actually weakness masquerading as strength. Power with and within. This is the ground. It believes power becomes infinite when shared. It leverages empathy to unite and stabilize. It offers transparency and critical thinking. It normalizes discomfort and moves toward accountability. It frames leadership as a responsibility to be in service to others. This is grounded confidence. It's not arrogant. It's not defensive. It doesn't need to prove anything. It just shows up, plants feet firmly, and leads. So here's the question. Which are you practicing? Which are you building in your team? Because it's not just a style. It's a choice about who you want to be. Once you understand the anatomy of power, once you see the difference between armor and ground, you're faced with a choice. Not just about how you lead, but about how you're willing to change. Because transformation isn't a workshop. It's not a new process or a slick tool you can buy. Transformation is hitting present reality at high velocity and watching it break apart at impact. It's uncomfortable. It's messy. It requires deconstruction. You have to strategically take a chainsaw to the systems that reward fear. The old structures that protect power over at the expense of power with. The habits that keep people small so you can feel big. And at the same time, you have to fiercely protect the elements critical to your mission identity. The values that aren't negotiable. The culture that actually works. The people who make the mission real. This is the paradox of transformation. You break things. And you protect things. At the same time. But here's the part most people miss. The fire is not just something to survive. The fire is the transformation. When you're in the fire, don't look for an exit. Look for what's being forged. The fire is where you find out what you're made of. It's where the old structure burns away and the new one starts to form. That's the phoenix. The mythical bird that doesn't just survive the fire, it is reborn from it. The old has to die for the new to rise. And that's a terrifying thing to accept. Because it means letting go of what you've built. What you've protected. What you've identified with. But here's the invitation. You don't have to be consumed by the fire. You can be forged by it. So here's the question. Are you willing to take a chainsaw to what isn't working? And are you clear enough about your mission identity to know what to protect? Because the fire is coming either way. The only question is whether you'll use it to transform, or let it consume you. Once you understand that transformation requires both breaking and protecting, once you accept the fire and trust the phoenix, you need a framework. Something to hold on to when everything else is shifting. That's where the 5 C's come in. They're not a checklist. They're a compass. A way to bring clarity to your mission when uncertainty is running high. Here's how they work. Context. What is the broader environment? What are the unspoken expectations? What's happening that no one is talking about? You can't lead in a vacuum. You need to understand the landscape. The cultural currents. The hidden pressures. Context is the foundation of every smart decision. Color. Paint a detailed picture of what success looks like. Don't be vague. Get specific. What does winning actually look like? Not just numbers on a dashboard. Real, human, tangible success. Color brings the vision to life. Connective tissue. How does this decision ripple out to other strategies? What's the interdependence? Who else needs to know? Every choice you make connects to something else. If you don't see the threads, you'll pull them by accident. Cost. What is the toll in money, time, bandwidth, and focus? Be honest about the trade-offs. Nothing is free. Every yes is a no to something else. Know what you're giving up. Consequence. What is at stake? What are the unintended consequences? The best leaders think beyond the immediate win. They ask, what happens next? And then they ask it again. The 5 C's help you think through decisions from every angle. They force you to be both dreamer and reality checker, poet and plumber. Use them. They'll keep your feet planted on strong ground, even when everything else is shifting. So here's the question. Are you using a compass? Or are you just hoping you're going in the right direction? Because hoping isn't a strategy. Clarity is. Once you have the 5 C's, a compass to guide your decisions, you can step back and see the bigger picture. Because strong ground isn't just one thing. It's an ecosystem. 3 layers that work together to create grounded confidence. The bedrock. The first layer. Vulnerability and ground force. This is where it all starts. The courage to plant your feet. The willingness to be vulnerable. The trust that strong relationships generate the power you need to move forward. Without this foundation, nothing else stands. The pillars. The second layer. Paradox and rethinking. This is where you hold opposing tensions without falling apart. Gritty faith and gritty facts. Plumbing and poetry. Certainty and uncertainty. The strength to think like a scientist, to test your beliefs, to look for reasons you might be wrong, to stay open. The pillars hold the weight of complexity. The canopy. The third layer. Mission clarity and transformation. This is where it all comes together. Breaking dysfunction to build living, adaptable systems. Fueled by the 5 C's. Vision and execution working together. The canopy is what people see. The results. The culture. The impact. But here's the thing. The canopy only exists because of what's beneath it. The bedrock. The pillars. Grounded confidence is not arrogance. It's not certainty. It's not knowing all the answers. It's an evolving system built on self-awareness, deep connection, and the joy of mastery. When you have all 3 layers working together, you don't just survive complexity. You lead through it. So here's the question. Which layer needs your attention right now? The bedrock? The pillars? Or the canopy? Because strong ground isn't built once. It's built continuously. Layer by layer. Choice by choice. We've covered a lot of ground. Vulnerability. Ground force. The tension between faith and facts. Plumbing and poetry. The courage to sit in uncertainty. The willingness to rethink. The anatomy of power. The fire of transformation. The 5 C's. The ecosystem of grounded confidence. This has been a synthesis of Brené Brown's latest book, Strong Ground, The Lessons of Daring Leadership, The Tenacity of Paradox, and the Wisdom of the Human Spirit. A vital playbook for navigating the turbulence of modern leadership. But let's be honest. All of this, the frameworks, the tools, the courage, it means nothing if we don't actually do the work. Because the challenges leaders face today are unlike anything we've seen before. AI is reshaping industries overnight. Radical market shifts are making old playbooks obsolete. The ground beneath us is shifting constantly. And in that chaos, our instinct is to armor up. To protect. To control. But here's the hard truth. We cannot soothe the anxiety of AI and radical market shifts with platitudes. We cannot say, what makes us human will ensure our relevance, and just hope that's enough. Because right now, we're not especially good at what makes us human. We are not hardwired for this level of uncertainty. And many of us feel as if the constant need to self-protect is driving the humanity right out of us. This is why organizational transformation today must foster deep connection, deep thinking, and deep collaboration. We need the courage to lead people in a way that honors and protects the wisdom of the human spirit. So here's the ultimate dare. Step onto the field. Stop watching from the sidelines. Stop waiting for certainty. The game is happening now. Find your ground. Plant your feet. Stand in your vulnerability. Trust the relationships that create stability. Replace your armor with courage. Drop the performance. Drop the protection. Show up. Be real. Lead with your whole heart. You are either a leader everywhere or nowhere. Every interaction. Every meeting. Every choice. You have strong ground to find. And the only way to find it is to look for it. Together. So here's the final question. Are you ready to step onto the field? Are you ready to lead not from intensity, but from foundation? Because that's where the work lives. That's where the courage lives. That's where strong ground is built.